from such amazing speakers over the last 2 days about the cutting edge of technology, about crowdsourcing, about cloud computing, about where the future is going to go between apps and tablets and everything that if you're interested in this space, we should all be learning about so that we can be at that cutting edge. But I want to talk to you about something different. I want to talk to you about the one thing that for me in my career has been more important than any of those things. Relationships.
It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money. We just want to make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Ain't about the cha-ching, cha-ching. Ain't about the, yeah, bubbling, bubbling. Wanna make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Okay.
So when you start a business, we all think about how much money are we going to be able to make? When can we exit? How are we going to raise our finances? How can we get the really great VC to back us so that we can be successful? We think about how can we make sure that we're ahead of the game by using the best technology? How do we make sure that we use every social platform to amplify our message to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible? This is such a competitive marketplace today. In the past, there were certain countries, like the UK and the US, that were more ahead, more advanced. But that's so not true today. Today, some of the best businesses are coming out of Latin America, are coming out of Spain. They're coming from everywhere because it's about the people. This isn't your standard people buy, people first talk. This is about how you really leverage creating, cultivating, and growing those relationships to give you and your business the advantage over your competitors. As Mariano stated, we met a few weeks ago back at Wayra UK when we were both on the judging panel. And I think this is exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about in action. A few weeks ago, I had no idea about Red Innova. I had never met Pablo. I'd never met Mariano. I was the only female judge. 9 judges, 1 woman, 8 men. Kind of interesting, I would say. But instead of shrinking back from that, I embraced the opportunity. I embraced the opportunity to create new relationships, to learn new things. And I think that if there's one thing that you guys can take away from the last 2 days, that you could implement straight away without any money, without any technical knowledge, is how you can do exactly the same thing, how you can reach out and you can create those relationships that give you the advantage over other people in your space, irrespective of how funded you are. And let's take funding for an example. You can see at the bottom there's a point about lines and ticks. You know, when we all start out, we start out as a little dot to people. People don't really know us, so you go to a VC or you go to Seed Camp or you go to Wayra, and what do they know about you? Nothing. You're just this little dot. And what you've got to do as a startup is move from being a dot to being a line in a relationship. So instead of going to a VC or any partner when you need them, start having those conversations a year, 18 months beforehand. Go and drop in for a coffee and say, I have a great idea, but I'm just starting to put it into practice. I just want to keep you updated because I don't want to come to you to partner with you now. I don't want to come to you to ask for money now. But in a year's time, in 18 months' time, when I've proven myself, I want to be able to come back and you know exactly who I am. And over those 12 to 18 months, you would have built a line between those dots. And you won't just be other startup or another company. You will be the person that they know that they've built a relationship with. Whatever we can do as individuals, one-on-one, is a fraction of what we can do when we work together. The company that I started in the UK, I started 2.5 years ago, and it's called Smarter, and it's a free resource for entrepreneurs, for startups, for small businesses. And we went from 0 to 350,000 small businesses using us every month. But we didn't do it by ourselves. We did it by partnering, by standing on the shoulders of giants. We work with people like Telefonica. We work with the largest bank in the UK, the Royal Bank of Scotland. And by doing so, as a little tiny startup, we were able to tap into their distribution channels. If you think how many brilliant ideas we have in the room today, how many great ideas you've heard when you're speaking to people over the last 2 days. But a great idea without distribution is nothing but a promise to a fool. It's in your head. It might be in other people's heads, but it's not actually out there in the heartland. People aren't embracing it until you are able to distribute that idea. And you really, genuinely can fast-track that whole process if you learn about how to cultivate relationships from the beginning, from the early stages. So when I had the idea for Smarter, it was because I felt very fortunate. In my career, I've been able to work with people like Sir Richard Branson and Sir James Dyson. I've done some incredible things, and I have a network of people to call upon, whether it's for financial resources or to help mentor me. But most startups and most small businesses don't have those opportunities. And I wanted to level the playing field and allow other people to have those same connections and those same relationships. I wanted to allow and enable small businesses to learn from each other. But I knew that setting up a business in the middle of a recession, which the UK was a few years ago and still is, I was either going to have to win the lottery to get the money, or I was going to have to think really smart about how I did it. And by reaching out and speaking to people like Telefonica, by sharing my passion, by doing something that I absolutely love, I was able to bring on board people like RBS, people like Telefonica, Intuit, who is the global leader in financial software. And as you can imagine, my distribution channel went from almost 0 to 1.2 million customers that RBS had. 1 million customers that Telefonica under the O2 brand has in the UK. And suddenly I was no longer this little tiny startup. I was a startup, but I was standing on the shoulders of giants. And some people think, well, that must be easy for you because you must have had the right contacts. You must have known those people. And that's absolutely bullshit. I didn't know anybody. But I was totally and utterly passionate about what I was trying to do. And I worked harder than anybody else I knew to prove to people that I was worth listening to. And I knocked on every door way before I needed people so that I could start to build those relationships. Because it's those relationships that will make the difference between your company being good and your company being great. It's those relationships that will make the difference between you exiting your business for a profit or you exiting your business for the kind of money that you really dream of. Nobody, no matter how smart you are, can create something fantastic, world-class by yourselves. We have to reach out. We have to build relationships. And it's not about going around and collecting hundreds or thousands of business cards. It's not about going to networking events and trying to speak to as many different people as you possibly can. It's about being genuinely interested in other people. Being interested in yourself, being passionate about what you do. It's about listening in conversations. If you hear somebody talking about a problem that they're having in their business, events like the last 2 days are such a fantastic opportunity for all of you to not connect with the speakers on the stage. Of course you can do that too, but I always say that whatever you learn from whoever is on this stage is only a fraction of what you could learn from each other. If you guys in this audience today combined all of your talents and your resources to support, help, and encourage your businesses to grow, you would all be far more successful than anybody who's taken this stage today. Because that is the power of relationships. Every one of you will have a challenge in your business, in your concept, in your idea, in your startup, that somebody else in the audience might be able to help you with. And if you're thinking about going to the VCs for raising finance in the future, if you take a step back and think about what it is that you want, the difference between creating a great relationship and not investing the time to recognize why that's so important could be the difference between you giving away a fraction of your equity to having to give away more than half your company. And when you put it into context, you begin to see that really every aspect of business is about our relationships. If you build up the trust and you build up the rapport with people that you want to work with in the future, whether it's VCs or it's a partner, if you have a great technical idea, I mean, sitting on the judging panel at Wayra, we saw so many fantastic businesses. And one of the things that Wayra was looking for was to try to find businesses that they could really help, that they would be able to embrace their technology and using the Telefonica platform would be able to distribute those businesses and get them traction really quickly. And that's a real live example of what relationships and building those relationships are about. And if you have one of those ideas that you think a company like Telefonica could help you with, and you haven't applied to Wayra, events like today and yesterday are exactly the opportunities for you to reach out to people and start building those relationships now. If you wait until you absolutely need somebody, you're always in the weakest of negotiating points. And it's not about wanting to please everybody all the time. It's not about being a friend to everybody, because a friend to everybody is a friend to no one. It's about being real and genuine. It's about understanding the value of what you bring. At Smarter, we only employ 18 people. But if I look at the businesses that we work with, they have a combined workforce of over 100,000 people. As a small company, as a startup, you have so much to offer large organizations. You have creativity, you have agility, you are able to think about solutions and problems and challenges in a way that large corporations can't. But every startup dreams of being able to partner with a large organization that can help them with their distribution channels, that can get them to market quicker. So it's about understanding what you bring to that relationship. If you want to go and speak to Telefonica or BBVA or any of the partners, understand what you bring to the table and what they can give to you. Just because you're a smaller company doesn't mean that it's an unequal balance. I had to go into meetings with the chief exec of Telefonica, the chief exec of RBS, and I had to sit there and negotiate not just a relationship, but a formal contract. And I had to do so with the full knowledge and passion that I really believed that what I was bringing to the table had just as much value as what they could offer me. It was different, but it had the same value. We offered each other different things. But I started building those relationships way before I actually had to go and have the meetings. So I proved myself. I utilized events like this to actually go straight up on the stage afterwards and speak to the speakers, to get their contact details, to follow up immediately, to tell them about what my plans were, to keep them in contact all through my journey so that they could see from just this germ of an idea into my head how that idea was progressing. And as a result, when 18 months later I sat there in front of the chief execs of very large companies, asking them to partner with us, to work with us, to collaborate so that we could reach more entrepreneurs and more small businesses, we had a yes from every single sponsor, from every single partner that we approached. I don't believe it was because we created rocket science. I don't believe it was because we had the best idea in the world, but I believe it was because we created strong relationships where we could prove to our partners what we could give to them. And many of you in the audience will either have businesses that you're already working on, or you'll have ideas that you're thinking about. I can guarantee you that if you start working on those relationships with each other, because it's not just about how you can stand on the shoulders of giants and how you can fast track your growth with large companies, it's about how you can collaborate with other smaller companies, how places and incubators like Wayra allow small businesses who are working on different projects to actually work together to pool resources, to be able to find ways of saving money, of working smarter together. And people talk a lot in the entrepreneurial world about mentorship. And I think it's really important because I'm often asked back in London to mentor people. And many of my peer groups feel that they just don't have the time to do it because they're too busy working. But you need to remember that a mentee becomes a mentor. And sometimes the people who you think are going to help you the most are not. And it's not about looking for the most important person in the room. It's not about going immediately to the CEO. It's about understanding what you can offer, but also about what you need from other people. And if you don't ask for things from people, you will never get them. So if you want to fast track your business, if you don't want to have to wait 5 years to exit, the most important thing you can learn to do is to build those relationships from the beginning. To create your network of people. Your network is your net worth. And I think that is so true in my experiences. I know it was mentioned that I launched my first book this year, and it was something I'd wanted to do for a long time, but I'd never done it before. But I used all my relationships that I'd built up over the years to ask people to review my book, including Seth Godin, who I'm sure many of you subscribe to his blog. And going to market with a book that has reviews from Richard Branson and Seth Godin actually makes a massive difference to your publisher. Now, this wasn't my traditional field of work, but I applied exactly the same lessons that I learned in business. Whatever it is that I think you want to do, relationships can get you there quicker. Sometimes it can be a really lonely world being an entrepreneur. Just because you choose to run your own business doesn't mean your friends do. It doesn't mean that your family does. And it doesn't necessarily mean that other people understand what you're doing. In fact, I often hear back in the UK that many entrepreneurs, their families want them to go and take what we call a proper job. Go and be an accountant or go and be a lawyer. But being an entrepreneur I think is the best choice that anybody can make if you've got a burning passion for wanting to do something that you're passionate about, something that you really love. It's about putting your heart into what you do. And it's about putting your heart into your relationships. It's about creating them early on so that you've proven yourself and you've proved your track record before you actually need to utilize people. At every opportunity you have at events like today, you should be out there when you're having lunch, which, how long have we got? 5 minutes? 1 minute, okay. Okay, guys, so when you go out and have lunch in 1 minute, please take the opportunity to come up to the speakers that you've heard and talk to all of us, but also talk to each other and find ways that, life is hard, but by God, it's so much easier if you create strong relationships around you. One of the best lessons that I ever learned in business was how to create a safety net. So imagine you go to the circus and you see the tightrope walkers, and they're walking along this little tiny fine line which oftentimes starting your own business and being an entrepreneur feels exactly like walking on a tightrope. But if you build a safety net underneath you of other entrepreneurs, of people who understand and get what you're trying to do, it's much easier to take risks. If you build relationships with large corporations who can help build your distribution channels, and if you build relationships with other people who have different skill sets to you that make your business that much stronger, that much more capable, it's so much easier to walk that tightrope that is business. So the one thing that I urge all of you to do today is to recognize that relationships and building them is not some soft skill. It's not some airy-fairy, doesn't really matter. It's actually everything. It's the exact thing that you need to embrace in order to achieve all of your hopes and dreams and ambitions, but to do it that much quicker. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sháá. So can you stay with us for lunch, right?
Absolutely.
So can we join the conversation outside all together for lunch?
I would rather everybody went and got some food and rather than stay for questions, so go and eat. I will be out there, and if there's anything I can do to help any of you, please reach out to me and come and talk to me. Thank you.
Great.